We have Howard Marsden, Chris Holy McGrail, Slomo. We have Matt Shaw, who you know, or you should know if you're here, and Stephen O'Malley, who you should also, I think, know as well. Of Ideologic Organs, Sunn. I'm going to fan out a bit now here and mention that there are two members of the fabled Ginunga Gap in presence. So I'm not actually texting my mum about that, these are my notes.
It's a great LP though.
It is a great LP. But let's get into it. I mean, I think the best place to start is really the beginning. So, Chris, Howard, the genesis of Slomo is kind of inextricably tied up with the genesis of the Creep. So if you could take us through the origins of both, the kind of conjoined origins of those.
Yeah, I think like so many things to do with Stone Club, Julian Cope is involved, and at the source of it all, really. So I was doing Julian Cope's website in the 90s and gradually drafted into bands with him. And so I appeared on an album called Ambient Metal with Julian, and he's like, don't make a big deal about this to anyone. And I'm like, Mum, I'm on a record with Julian Cope, and my nan and everyone, you know, and so on. And then sort of created a bit of a, sort of started treating me like a member of his band. So I was a member of his band, and I toured with him from really just basically being his web designer. I was promoted to synth player. I think he'd lost a synth player, so I became the synth player. And then, so I built the McGrail and Howard website, and I met Howard through that and through the unsung forums about music. And we were going and seeing sites. This is 2002 to 2003. And so we met in real life, and started hanging out, started exchanging music, started talking about stuff. And then he was visiting one weekend, and we were just home alone, the two of us, while our then partners were off seeing someone else, a friend. We were just like, it was just a thing that happened. Basically, also at this point, Stephen O'Malley is actually really involved, because through my work with Julian, I'd met Stephen and we'd collaborated on a few things and were hugely in touch. And I sort of like got an idea of how he was working with the EBO, which is something that keeps the string on a guitar vibrating. So, oh, I've got to have an EBO. So got an EBO. Howard, I've got an EBO. Let me show you what the EBO does. And pretty much like that was the genesis of the Creep, is that we were sort of playing this music together one afternoon. We never played music together before, but Howard's messing around on the synthesizer. I'm on an EBO through the most cavernous reverb I can create on my computer. And after about sort of 20 minutes, I just thought, oh, I should record this really. It sounds good, doesn't it? It sounds all right. So single sort of tap of the space bar, and off we go. And it's not, you know, it's not a band. It's nothing at this point. It's just, we're just having an afternoon.
Nice time,
yeah. And at one point, a friend of mine calls me up, and I'm like, oh, I've got to take this because this is going through a bad patch. So there's a period quite early on where I'm not even playing anything because I'm on the phone to Pete. And so Pete's, you know, that's great, we hang up and get back in and crash back in with an EBO note and carry on for an hour. At which point probably we just sort of think like, oh, okay, we should probably stop doing this at this point. And it stopped. And then we listened back over the coming weeks and just go, this is fantastic. How did we do this? What does it mean? How does it fit into things? And this was a week after John Balance had died from Coil. So initially we dubbed it internally as the Ballad of John and Sleazy. And obviously that's a bit arch and a little bit, not that we were in a position to cash in, but it felt like almost like a cash in name, or take advantage of the opportunity. Grief, something was called. Anyway, and more and more we thought about it, and it connected us back to Bolo Fogou, which is somewhere we both visited that year. And it just seemed to be the perfect sort of soundtrack to Bolo Fogou. So we didn't have it as a band. We weren't. It had no external pressure to change, to develop, to be interesting. It just happened.
some of the information accompanying the album mention no eye contact and minimal overdubs. I mean, were those strict self-imposed limits, as it were?
I think we probably just felt a bit awkward about the whole thing.
It's a very English message.
Slightly hungover as well, probably.
Yeah, so it's
just,
so it was really the most like it was a normal Saturday afternoon at home, but with an ambient doom soundtrack emerging. So it's true about the minimal overdubs. We really did very little to it.
And obviously you mentioned the kind of coil connection there. Were you aware of or interested in what I think many people here are probably very familiar with, the Journey to Avebury, the Derek Jarman film that they soundtracked in, I think that, was it the 90s they soundtracked that or the 80s?
Would be 90s.
Right,
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge Coil fan,
Yeah.
long-term Coil fan, so yeah, very aware of that. But I'm not sure how much of an influence it was directly on that
Yeah.
particular thing that we're doing that afternoon, but it's all there, isn't it? Yeah.
Excellent. And should mention it's got the life of The Creep. It's spanned to date 3 labels. First of all, Julian Coates' Fuck Off and Die imprint, where it was a CDR.
Yeah.
That was followed by a reissue. That was 2005. 2006 was the important issue on CD, and now Stephen O'Malley has reissued it on Ideologic Organ as a vinyl LP. Now, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about, well, your part in the story of Slomo and The Creep, and maybe as well some of the challenges involved in essentially taking a long, continuous piece of music and essentially dividing it for a vinyl release.
I remember getting the CDR in the mail from Chris in 2005. And, I was living in Manhattan at the time, maybe it was the summer, and playing it in my apartment, and the atmosphere of the music completely overriding all of the other atmospheres of New York or what was going on there. It really, really touched me, and I listened to it a lot at that time, and the temporality of it really struck me. In fact, the title, until tonight, I had always associated it with the temporality of the music. Like, it's an hour-long piece, but you can play it for 8 times in a row, and it's always giving this sort of sensation and space. But I didn't know that the entrance of the Fogou was called The Creep. The Creep. I mean, it's right on the cover. You know, there's a portrait of the creep going in, I guess, right? That's what you call that entrance. And that's really interesting. That's what, you know, like with great music, you're always discovering new aspects of its personality and music and form. Chris wrote me this year saying, "Hey man, The Creep is 20 years old this year," and I was like, wow, temporality. 20 years already, it's crazy. At the time, when I had the CDR, Ideologic.org was a website, kind of blog thing, pre-social media. Well, I mean, social media was around, but I used it as a blogger, kind of fanzine, and I wrote about The Creep and told all the underground doom fans and stuff that I was friends with, and it was cool to share that. And we played some music together. He played with Sunn a few times, and Slomo made some more records as well, some more CDs, and it was cool to see, like, you know, as a music fan, the genesis of a band be so spare and minimal, and then continue on through time. And now, but when you wrote me this year, it's 20 years old. I was like, fuck, that's fast. That's the only fast thing about the music. It's so 20 years already. But we want to do something. We want to, you know, would you be interested to do an LP? Like, oh, cool. My label is, you know, in a position we can release records that are niche and obscure, and there's audience, and I love the music. It's fun to work with friends on projects, especially with over so much time. The one issue we had was it going to be a double LP or a 3-sided LP, or like how can we do it? And one thing we agreed on was, it's a little bit of a bummer to have to stop the music and turn it over, because I just remember like listening to a CD on repeat for hours. And eventually I had a talk with this mastering engineer we work with here and there, named Rashad Becker. He's a real master of mastering and of cutting lacquers. And in the past, we've had some problematic situations. I've asked him for advice, and he's done some sample cuts and stuff, because to make a record, you actually use a lathe to cut a lacquer disc as a master, and then that becomes that's a positive for a mold, and then it turns into the pressing plates eventually after a three-step process. But that first piece is very, very important, that it's cut correctly. In any case, Rashad's like, yeah, send me the music and I'll take a look at it, see, maybe we can cut it on one LP, like 30-minute sides. I was like, whoa, I think I have a Xenakis LP from the 60s that might be 30 minutes on a side or something. There's a few things out there. I know it can be done. Everyone else usually says, no, not over 20 minutes. It's going to sound terrible. But he did that. He sent us these files of his mastering. It's like, it sounds exactly the same. It sounds cool. It sounds like a good mastering. And then, yeah, let's try it. Let's make test pressings. And one side's 31 minutes and the other one's 29. We got the test pressings. It was like, okay, here we go. What's it gonna? Because there's serious bass on it too. With the Korg.
I think the thing is that there's bass on it, and there's high end, and there's very little in the middle to corrupt or to fill the grooves essentially. So you've got it's amazing to hear that bass like that, because it kind of shouldn't work.
Right, exactly. But there's so much emptiness.
Yeah.
Or space in the music. I think he was able to do it. And the only, I wouldn't say consequence, but you just have to a little bit more on the volume. It's like super high. It was really, really surprising and great. So we were able to make a 60-minute LP. And I mean, I think that conceptually with the music, it's more honest actually. At least you can go through 30 minutes and then turn it over. It's always something about records with certain styles of music, like why should it be compromising the continuity of duration, But in this case, I think we found technically, it's cool, it's a technical accomplishment of something that's hyper arcane, music and concept. It's like, but yeah, making all the, making the sleeve and everything, working with Chris, super easy. Did all the, everything was very easy to put together and very smooth and stuff. So, but I just wanted to talk about that with Rashad, because it's getting a chance to work with someone who's such a master technically is really an honor, and that there's no judgment about what it is. Like he's just like, I see this, it's artistic, I'm going to solve this. And, that's one interesting thing about that has to do with temporality too, which is for me at the core of the music on the Creep.
Initially, was there the idea that it would eventually be on vinyl? Is that something you wanted initially? And was there any resistance, in fact, to the idea of kind of splitting it for a vinyl release from you guys?
I think that we felt that splitting it over 2 LPs was just going to be a pain to have to get up after 15 minutes and flip it over. And it would go against the whole point of the record, really, which is to not know where you are in it. Is it 10 minutes? Is it 25? And is it 55? And just, you really can't tell, So to have as few signposts as possible in it, so that you could just trip out to it completely. So the vinyl too. I think we always thought initially like it could be a double LP, but we just couldn't work out how to slice it up, and it didn't feel good to slice it like that. So, and I think maybe at that point, in the early noughties or the mid noughties, vinyl wasn't as coveted, and there were lots of CDRs. There's a really fantastic CDR culture going on, and so to be part of that was a total vibe, you know. But to make the album mean something in 20 years later on a format that's now such a vibe again, it's fantastic. Yeah.
I mean, I'm interested in something that Stephen mentioned actually about the interpreting the title as referring directly to the music. It's like, for my own part, I mean, I came across the music, the album, when I was working at Rough Trade for a bit, and it was I just saw this strange artifact, looked at the sleeve notes, looked at the credits, and was like, okay, that's going on my staff pile. Quickly snapped it up. But my interpretation, and I think this was kind of assisted by the verse on the sleeve as well, which, if you're familiar with the record, you'll probably be able to repeat that verbatim. I interpreted The Creep as Slomo, as this single entity. In fact, I knew nothing of Fogou's. I still know very little, if I'm perfectly honest. That's why I'm here to learn. But I mean, was that a sense for you that there was an entity at work, as it were?
I think that's often the case with the band's first album anyway. It's following it up. You've got to get really conceptual or try and find some kind of relevance or something to hang it all on. But usually it's nice to appear fully formed, and I think that's artists that appear fully formed are really interesting. And so to appear fully formed and appear interesting was fantastic.
But also for minimal music as well, the actual packaging is relatively minimal in terms of the information that's on there. There's nothing telling you what to think. There's nothing really telling you what these things are. Even the verse is very kind of, you know, opaque and kind of suggestive as the music. I mean, was that a conscious kind of approach on your part?
Yeah, I guess we were deliberately obtuse, really, with the choice of
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a picture of a caravan on there that has seemingly nothing to do at all with the rest of it. It was actually parked next to the Fogou for a while. That's the only reason it's there.
Yeah.
You know, it's just deliberately trying to throw you off the stand. And then the inner as well is printed.
Yeah.
It's like that gloop inside. You know, that's
You
kind of,
can't quite see.
yeah.
I remember for ages thinking that there was an insert with the, which refers to the actual inner sleeve, right? The kind of illustrated inner sleeve.
Yes,
And like, for
the
ages I
inside.
thought I had an incomplete copy. Because I was like, where's my insert? God damn it, I've been stiffed. But obviously not, you know. I've actually got my original copy with me for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why, but there you go. A totemic item of some form. So yeah, moving to I'm here from the Wire talking about the musical side of things, and I think equally important is the resonance that it has for Stone Club. So I mean, I wonder, Matt, if you have some kind of questions or comments or some stories about your own involvement with the music and with the band.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely first came across this record because of Julian Cope, you know, because, you know, this Fuck Off and Die, like we talked about, this amazing label that had a Princess Diana logo. There was Head Heritage. Was it Head Heritage that had like the TC Lethbridge logo on? Anyway, there were all these different labels and they would change all the time, so you'd have to be really alert to get them. And at the time I was running a CDR label called Apollo Land, and Julian would write about those releases really regularly on, he used to do this thing called Druidian, which is like a monthly thing about music. And so like you really made it if like one of your 50, you know, 50 copies CDRs got written about by Julian. It was like, yeah, you know, it's like, and obviously they'd sell out. And at that time, David Keenan and Heather Lee were running Volcanic Tongues, so they would sell all those releases through it. So it'd be kind of like these kind of outlets. And going to Ancient Sites was really, to me, completely connected up with these kind of things. And I think the thing with the Fogou, I released 3 albums with a band called Fogou, which was me and a Scottish sound artist called Brian Lavelle. And we went in there and we thought it would be like howling reverb, but actually you go in there and it's like the deadest room you've ever been in. It doesn't do anything. You kind of, you know, go, but it just goes, you know, it's like the moss and everything else sort of soaks the sound up, so you get this incredibly It's totally flat. So it's a really strange thing, and I think I suppose I associate a lot of those times. In fact, it's not dissimilar to this environment, like going to Fogou's, listening to The Creep, going to Fogou's, listening to Sunn. You know, that it all felt like it was connected to me in a way, and sort of early Sunn gigs connected with Julian Cope as well. I remember it was like an All Tomorrow's Parties where there was going to be like a thing where you would play together, and we were on the way down and then something changed, but then seeing Sunn at the Hippodrome at the Frieze Art Fair, and it just been
I remember that gig.
Yeah,
that was a phenomenal event.
But it has it has the feeling of being in somewhere like a Fogou. It has the same intense claustrophobia, and you know, some people love it and they're down the front. You know, the same with listening to The Creep. Some people will play it really, really loud, and other people will be shying away. Less spiders though in the Hippodrome. But maybe some creeps.
Yeah, I think so, historically.
But yeah, it was a really, really important release, and the thing with all those releases, I suppose, they were so limited and they were so hard to get. You know, they would be gone. Someone would say, "Did you get the thing?" and it was gone. But I don't know. There's a thing about going to visit ancient sites that I think is really similar in a way to that sort of culture, which is Fiona was talking about it earlier on. Like, there's a whole bunch of places she wants to visit, all of them, and Stonelands visits a lot of them. But it's a bit like that with underground music or people that you love. You sort of know it's all out there, and there's this obsession often with trying to find them and tick them off, and you can't always get them, you can't always access them, you can't always find them. But I think that's maybe what keeps us going in a way. It's very hopeful. It's the sense of always becoming. You're always trying to find the next thing, and you always keeps you alive.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned that. I always found The Creep very, very, and I listened to it in preparation again this afternoon, which is always a pleasure, you know. But there's something immensely life-affirming about that piece of music. It's actually, to some extent, I think very kind of upful and bright in some ways. Maybe that's me, but I'm just wondering in terms of like the categorization of the music as drone doom or ambient doom. I mean, does that fully really encapsulate what it is? I understand that's not necessarily your definition of the music.
I sort of don't mind really. I think what I hope that music does is provide some catharsis, really, some kind of release. So at least there's a payoff at the end if you manage to get to the end of it. It was worth it in some small way, you know. And I think that with a lot of that music, it does feel connected to its environment, just by opening things up that much that you can ponder what's going on outside your window, or you know, perhaps you'll sort of hear a truck 2 streets away that seems to meld with it in some way, and it sort of attaches itself to your environment, and I think that's really helpful. And so it can bring control to your environment, even in an urban environment. You can shut out London, you know, if it's expansive enough, and if it doesn't, it's not trying to do too much really. So you sort of bind with it. It's like some kind of agent that you can kind of connect to. That's not necessarily to say that that's what we wanted to do and we're great at it, but the music that does perform that function, we're always going to want it, you know.
Yeah. I mean, there was. Sorry,
Oh, I think the way you described it, creating the music is exactly that too. You were inside of it, and then it seemed like you were totally immersed in just experimenting together and listening, probably. And then an hour had gone by, and so it's very honest in that way. Like, that's how it's created, and that kind of transmission to the listener is really relevant.
It felt like kind of, I remember at the time, there was almost a kind of very underpopulated, but nonetheless, it seemed to me very much existent subgenre, which I thought of at the time. This is one of my unsuccessful musical terms, but environmental, if you like.
I like that.
Actually, please spread that. I would like that to take off eventually. Stuff like growing, early growing stuff. If you remember their stuff, which was very much kind of, it was heavy, but it was also incredibly tied to the environment. Incredibly, I mean, you put out a record called Life Metal. It was almost in that kind of area, you know. Instead of, it's heavy, but it's also kind of full of kind of joy in a way, life. You know, I mean, is that something you see in the music yourselves?
Could do, I think. Yeah. It still surprises me just because it's so long, and so you can just. But it comes from a time when we had lots of hour-long albums, and so it was easy to think, oh, we can just put this out as one of those. You know, there was Queens of the Circulating Library by Coyle, there was Odin by Julian Cope, which is just an incredible listen. Dope Smoker by Sleep, tons of stuff actually, and so people were prepared to make music an hour long, and there was an audience for music an hour long. And I think, I mean, it goes back really, you know, if you go back sort of to the 60s, you've got 3-hour pieces by Lamont Young and so on, that are really pushing at temporality, as Stephen was saying. And that's difficult to do on a 45 or a single side of an LP, but CD and digital seem to open that up to like, well, why does it have to stop? You know? I did an album with Julian that hasn't come out yet called Coma, which is 4 hours long.
Amazing. So that will be a vinyl release as well.
Imagine,
Just constant up and down to the record player.
Constant rotation during the Coma, But why not? Why do you have to be limited to the formats? You know,
Quite.
But we don't anymore.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know if there's going to be an official release, but the kind of promo of the record goes out with a kind of snippet, like a kind of excerpt, which I think is about 7 minutes, which actually works really well. It could go out as a kind of the album's single.
Our first
In a way. Yeah, there you go. Maybe Christmas, actually, just saying. It was November originally, wasn't it? Released?
Winter solstice.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I was in the audience.
What was I thinking?
I'd love to see like a Top of the Pops comeback, you know,
Yes.
it's just Slomo playing inside Bodhi Fogou, and it's like, we're just going to go over there now, it's like the single edit, that would be great.
Yeah, return to the days of KLF on Top of the Pops.
With Pans people.
Yeah. That would be so appropriate as well, that's brilliant. Well, I wonder if it's worth opening up the floor to some questions, like if anyone has anything they'd like to ask Steve or Slomo or Matt regarding what they do, the Creep, or Slomo in general, or Fogou Core, whether they have any recommendations in that genre.
That has to be a thing, doesn't it? Fogou Core.
And environmental.
That's great.
That's really good.
Thank you.
That the hashtag's for tomorrow for
I've been
anyone.
saying this for 20 years. Okay, so yeah, if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand, and we probably won't pass you a mic, so you'll have to shout. Sorry. Is that a hand? No, people are just scratching.
That's okay.
I don't see any questions out there. I think we've answered everything. That's kind of
I
amazing.
think so. Like my only other thing I think is that like all of those different combinations coming together and running the Modern Antiquarian, like the message boards at that time, they were so full of things. There was like, you know, because Julian had the Modern Antiquarian about ancient sites, Unsung about, you know, slightly forgotten or not recognised enough music, you know, which is really important today as well. I think people forget that message board. It kind of got trolled for a little while by people that just put shit in there every day. But at the time it was so relevant because it was all about road protests, it was all about environmentalism, it was all about these different things. I see it as a really, really important early online experience. And I think as well, like Julian's ability to sort of spot and recognise artistically really important things that were going on, you know, including Sunn, and of course with Slomo was a really important part of this. And I think that's, you know, like there's been publications of those writings over time, but it's a really pivotal time, and it really changed a lot of the way CDR culture and underground music works. You know, like you said, Lamont Young, you've got Tony Conrad, you've got all these people that did fucking amazing records, durational pieces, temporal music, but then you've also got this thing where all of a sudden anyone could do it. So, you know, so you could take a trip to Cornwall and you could be inspired by that, and you could make a record that would speak to that. And I think that's, The Creep is such an incredible example of a piece of music that was entirely influenced by West Penwith in that way.
I think something that occurred to me today, in Joe's notes about the album, he tied it to the British landscape. And today we drove through a few towns on the way to the train station to come to London, with flags hanging from lampposts, sprayed roundabouts and so on. And to just think that there's another sort of Britishness that you can key into that doesn't involve any of that. Not to get kind of political here, because I won't, but you know, it was very, and I'd be really bad at it, but to think that like, that there is a Britishness that we can celebrate as part of Stone Club, that has nothing to do with any of that.
That's a fantastic point, actually. Yeah, well worth making, I think. Well, I don't know. Do you think we're ready to?
Needle drop?
Yeah, is everyone ready for the most epic DJ set you've ever heard in your life? It's going to consist of 2 entire sides of vinyl, mastered incredibly well, played incredibly loud, with 2 custom-made films, one for side A, one for side B. And we're going to put those on the screen. Who's going to drop the needle, though?
Chris.
Where is it?
Behind the screen. I think there's just a button to press.
Yeah, it's Paul, what do we have to do to put the record on? Do we just like literally? We just press play on deck B, and I'm going to put the film on,
I can't, because that might mess.
and then we'll leave you all to watch.
Oh, I should also plug. We got issue 500 of The Wire for sale. So if you want one of those, grab one.
I should also say, you don't have to sit and watch this film. You can chat while the music's on. It's not like some school assembly from hell. So you know, chill with the music.
And tons of LPs available at the back, along with other good merchandise items. So we're going to clear the stage. As soon as the music starts, I'm going to press play on the film, and then we'll do the ceremony of side 2. Channel 4.
We're good. Go. Press play.